Welcome everyone. My name is Erin Meyer. I'm the Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator at UC Merced. This is an AMA series, Ask Me Anything series, where we invite an expert in to talk about anything related to sustainability, whether it's sustainable food, sustainable transportation, like our last one, or just any other topic. And so we invited a local farmer here today to talk to us about farming and sustainability and ag and stuff like that, and also maybe plant-based diets, because I know that that's special to you and it's special to me as well. So Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Michael Serrano. I farm for my family out in the Grand California, in the Central Valley, near, I don't know where all you guys are, but near Merced and UC Merced, about 15 minutes away. An interesting life. Not interesting, but I've had a lot of career path choices, options that I've tested in a lot of different fields. So I started going to school here. I wanted to always play football, American football. So I went up and played at Merced College. I played football there. I got recruited by a D3 college up in the Bay Area, went to the Bay Area, got my degree in mass communications, as well as played football for 3 years after breaking my ankle at one point. And then ever since I was 10, I wanted to be in the film industry. So I had it in my head that I was going to work in the film industry. And I moved to LA with my sister, was down there for a little bit. So I lived with her. I did an internship, finished school, went back down, called everybody that I knew, and ended up getting job after job and worked down there for 9 years. So worked my way through being a production assistant on between TV and film and commercials and a music video or music videos. And then in 2014, I joined the Guild, which is the Directors Guild. And I didn't get a lot of work at because it gets less work. So PAs, as they call them, production assistants, there's a lot, they can be a lot during a film, so or TV show. Once you become an assistant director, which is what the progression was for the Directors Guild that I joined, now you have 3 per job. So the jobs get more sparse. So I decided to move home because I was coming home every almond harvest to help out my dad and my mom. So I came home and I ended up moving up permanently because I met my now wife, and my mom ended up passing away 3 years after that. So I stayed home, and now I've been helping on the farm and doing what I can, and trying to be as sustainable as possible in my life and in farming. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Let's begin. Who has questions for Michael?
You mind if I ask what was his experience? What was your experience like in filmmaking? And the reason I asked, our students are interested in trying to make some films for the Robert Redford Center. So if you don't mind sharing anything that you could with our students on that?
Yeah, my filming experience was wonderful. There's a lot going on in the film industry right now. I don't know how tied into the news you are as far as down in the film industry per se. They're on the brink of a strike right now through IATSE, which is their unions, versus the Producers Guild or the AMP. I'm not familiar with the anagram for the producers and all the big companies like Netflix, Apple, so forth and so on. But when I went down there, that was all just brand new. So that was just starting. Before I got out, I worked on a pilot called Zombieland, which was based off the feature, and they tried to make it a TV series through Amazon, which was early on. And I went to Atlanta and filmed in Atlanta for a week, and it was a very hard job, but it was a very fun job as well. But overall, my experience in the film industry was wonderful. So I started off I watched a show, I remember on Discovery when I was a little kid, because we had cable, we had the big satellite dish that you had to change galaxies and things like that, which I think is funny that nobody would even know what that is nowadays. And there was a TV show on Discovery called Movie Magic, and it showed the special effects of all these movies. So how they shot, and I remember distinctly Cliffhanger. I remember showing the helicopter scene of the helicopter crashing into the side of the mountain in Cliffhanger. So that made me want to get in the film industry. So long story short, so when I got to the film industry, I was eager beaver. I was ready to go. I wanted to do whatever I could. So I got in, and I'm a very boisterous person. I'm very outgoing. I'm very talkative. I will talk and chat with anybody. So I got down there, and I wasn't afraid of anything, and went after it. I got an internship on Serenity, which was based off the TV show Firefly. And that was a big deal for their fan base, which I had no idea. So I worked with Joss Whedon, who's a huge name now in Marvel and things like that, and Nathan Fillion, who is a huge name now, and so forth and so on. And the experience was amazing. I got to interview Alan Tudyk, who has had a great career, and I got in trouble for doing so. But he was on my side, and it worked out because I didn't know the structure and the ethics of the film industry. So I don't regret doing what I did, but I snapped a picture of Nathan Fillion. I remember, I still have it, and I got in trouble for it. I got yelled at by my boss going, "You absolutely do not do that." But that was my first experience, and I took that and I rolled. So overall, I had a great experience with the film industry. I think it's a great career. We are worked to death, or they are worked to death. And that's what the strike is on the brink right now. Is I did many days that were 16, 17, 18-hour days. The longest I've ever done, I believe, on a actual union shoot was 20, I think it was 23 hours. I worked on Knocked Up or Ocean's 13. I can't remember which one it was. It was in Las Vegas, and it included travel time. So we had to fly to Las Vegas. Well, we shot something in LA, got on a plane, flew to Las Vegas and shot. And then we ended up wrapping out. And as production assistants and assistant directors, you are the first in and the last out. So, but all those experience, to answer your question about how my experience was in the film industry, it was very, very, very well, or very good. And I still have friends to this day, and I still miss it, but I'm okay that I've moved on. But that's something I'll cherish forever, that I think any of your students, that they are interested, and that's something that they were looking forward to, I say go for it. I think it's an honest job, just like anything else. It's just like farming, or it's just like being a teacher. It's a job. And there is some misconception is that, oh, I want to go shoot this, I'm going to become a star, and now you can be a star for being on TikTok. But down there it's an honest job, and there's a lot of people that use it as their job, and that's their profession, and they take a lot of pride in everything they do, whether you're a grip or you're a special effects coordinator or you're a production assistant. And the thing with the film industry, there's always growth. And one thing special about that industry that I don't know if many people know is it's kind of like an independent contractor. So you're with these people for 3 months, a month, 9 months, depending on your job title. And you're with those people, and you create a very bond or friendship, or maybe you don't get along with them at all. But that's okay, because the job will end. And then you get to choose on which people you worked with, and you continue on from there, and you try to work with the people that are good to you and that you are friends with. And that creates a really nice community amongst that. And that's something special that I think people don't realize with that industry, that if they do go that way, that it's a nice cohort of people, if you will. So I don't know if I answered your question, Jeff, but would you like me to elaborate on anything specific?
No, that was excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Irene?
Hi, thanks for taking time out of your day to hang out with us and answer questions. I'm on faculty at UC Merced. I'm 3 years or so in, and I'm interested in hearing what do you hope for UC Merced's contributions to our region, farmers in the region, your family, it could be as self-interested as you want, or more like your neighbors. I'm just curious because I don't come from the region, but I came to work at UC Merced because I think the idea is to contribute to the region. So I'm interested to know what you would say as somebody who is from there and lives there.
UC is an interesting topic, I think, because I remember when the UC was first starting to be built, and I remember all the controversy over the golf course up there and the fairy shrimp and all of that. So I think it put a lot of bad taste in a lot of local mouths. And I'm speaking only from my own opinion and what I've heard. Nothing is factual, and if I'm wrong on anything, I apologize. But my opinion on the UC is I think the UC, and it's not always on the UC, I think it's on the other side. So just a little starting point is I think the UC puts a lot of bad taste in a lot of people, especially farmers, because of it's very environmentally friendly, or they want to be more environmental forward, if you will. And they're not so much ag friendly, if you will. Because I remember one of the arguments there was, I think my father brought this up, or a friend of ours was saying that, well, if they were going to build a UC in the middle of Merced, then why don't they have an agricultural school like UC Davis or like Cal Poly, which is a great question. I don't know why they don't expand more on that. But in the other way, I think of, because I'm kind of a devil's advocate. So I like asking questions from both sides, and I like wondering why people sit where they sit. And to me, environment is ag. So if you're environmental forward, you're ag forward as well. It just depends on what kind of conversations you're having amongst your area that you are. And I think that could be improved on both sides, from the farmer side and from the UC side. And I sit on the, as a director on the Merced Farm Bureau board right now. And I know that conversation is starting between water and things of that nature of, I think, the science department or something along in the UC Merced that has come to our meeting and talked to us about water and what we are looking forward to as farmers. And I think that's a good start. I think conversation starting that way, but with the conversation starting is that you have to have an open mind. I know it's easier to say than actually do, because I know a lot of farmers that they just don't, or anybody in ag, I should say, not necessarily strictly farmers, but in all ag, is that they are very stubborn. They want what they want, and that's what it is. And I'm at fault for that sometimes, as well as the other side. There's no give way. So I think that conversation is the start, but I think it needs to further go along and have not necessarily solutions, because you're always learning, right? So in education, you're never going to be the smartest person in the room, because there's always something that they don't know about. And that's my opinion. I know there's some people that don't believe that, but I think the UC could be more involved, I think, and I think it's going that way. I think it could be a little more welcoming to certain things, as well as the community can be more welcoming of the UC and allowing them to have more avenues, so to speak. I don't know if I answered your question. I may have answered too much.
Oh, no, I really appreciate hearing some of the historical, like you said, back when there was a conversation, it was topic and location and all that. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that it was really interesting to hear that you worked on Serenity, because I actually have seen the whole Firefly series, and I'm not a Buffy fan. I mean, I saw some Buffy, but so I don't know how I found Firefly. I figured out, it doesn't matter. But Firefly, for those of you who don't know, was a futuristic thing, and they were like traveling around planets, but they were some of the people were talking Chinese just randomly, and it was like, what's going on?
And
I
that's
have to
funny.
say, they were speaking Chinese badly, I will say, but whatever. It was very creative.
And that's funny, because I actually had that question for Joss, because I didn't know who Joss was, Joss Whedon. And I remember walking with him in the trailers going, why is all the Chinese around? And he told me, he's like, that's going to be the future. He's like, that's what I believe the future is going to be, is it's going to be China and English. And or China and America. And that's who's going to control the world. And that's why he wrote it that way.
If you don't mind me interjecting, Michael, I had the same question for UC Merced about why did they have certain departments and why were they pushing forward for different issues? And I was concerned about ag, and the answer that I was given was that they don't want to dilute it. So I guess there's 10 UC campuses, so each one has a particular focus, and also they don't want to put one at all campuses because then it dilutes. That's what I was told.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That makes sense. I just wanted to bring up that is a conversation that I've heard asked, why is that? Because like I said, farmers are selfish. They want an ag school right next to them. Who wouldn't want somebody to promote your industry that you're in the middle of? But yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. But Aaron, you said you had some questions as well.
I do. I can ask those unless anyone wants to throw in a few others.
There is a question in the chat, that's related to what you were talking about. If you want to peek there.
I didn't see that.
It says, hi, Michael. Based on that answer, I had a lot of interest in whether local ag and farmers is interested in new sustainable practices, for example, smaller farms with more biodiversity. I understand these practices are difficult to implement financially and culturally.
Yes, we are interested in implementing sustainable practices, and my sister and I have actually, who's on this chat, she and I have been investigating some of those, and we have been a part of some of those as far as trying to create the buzz, if you will. We're small, we're 350 acres, which to most people they say, oh my gosh, that's huge, but it's actually not, especially for the three of us and my other sister who helps part-time. It's a lot of work for three people. So anyway, so we're trying to create buzz, and we have gone through NRCS, which is oh my gosh, I can't even think of what it stands for right now. NRCS and FSA to get governmental programs to implement, and we actually ended up planting hedgerows along our creek to help subsidence and runoff of our creek banks, and to bring pollinators in and bring more biodiversity to our farm, as well as we have started doing cover cropping in 50 acres, kind of like a trial plot, to see how it does. So we are trying to implement. I think that's one of those things that people say that it's not financially or it's difficult financially, as you stated, Lily, and culturally. But I disagree on that, because there are programs out there, and if you are willing to try it, you are willing to try it. But it depends on how open-minded you are of trying these new concepts, if you will. And technically, they're old concepts; they're not new concepts, because this is the way that our great grandfather generation were farming. They had no other ways except for this way, and their crops were really far. Thank you, Christine. Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's the NRCS. So financially, I don't think it's that difficult, because there are these programs out there, and I know other farmers that they are planting cover crops to help and doing trials of different cover crops, and they're not going through the program. So it can't be that financially difficult to implement these. I think it's more of they don't think it will work. I don't think the science, it's kind of like being plant-based, if you will, and vegan, that people don't believe the science. And that's just what it is. And people are very biased, and they won't change their mind no matter what. It's kind of like talking to somebody who's colorblind and saying the sky is blue and they're saying it's green. Well, you're never going to convince them otherwise, because they see green and not blue. So I don't think it's very difficult to implement if you can get past that, the biases that you have as an individual, and see if those things can work and can help. Because it's kind of like I tell my 4.5-year-old daughter. She gets really sad. Like this morning, she was on the verge of tears because or no, it was last night at dinner because she couldn't open a bag. So my wife opened it for her and she got really teary-eyed. And it's like, it's okay. Whatever we do, we're trying to help you. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help you. And we're trying to make that easier for you or pass it along in a better way. And I think that kind of goes towards eating plant-based as well as these sustainable practices, is that I believe all these, if you will, quote unquote, environmentalists are trying to help, not trying to hurt. We're trying to figure out a way to cohabitate. And I think it goes a little extreme sometimes and they get too takey, if you will. And that goes from both sides. And I apologize for the term takey, but it's all about, it's selfish reasons that people always, it's more selfish reasons than helpful reasons. And I think that's an issue. So when somebody gives advice, for example, if somebody gives advice, because I've had this conversation with someone before, it's they expect you to take their advice. Well, no, that's not necessarily the way it works. Now, if you suggest something, I will take it and I will take my own takeaway from that. But I'm going to think about it and I'm going to implement it the way that I think fits for us. And I think that needs to be more of the biodiversity and the more sustainable practices, is that it needs to be welcomed and trialed and shown. And to get over the actual people not believing the science, I don't know how you get over that. That's just, I don't have an answer for that, because I know my sister and I, who are both plant-based, and we have those conversations, and it's very difficult for people to understand certain aspects of that, or those ways.
I apologize if I'm hogging the mic, but I had a question for you, Michael, if that's all right.
Yeah, don't apologize.
Our students are working on a program called pollinator patches, where we're trying to get, when you said pollinators, the whole class, our students' ears, and then I asked them, would they be okay with me asking you this? But our pollinator patches, we're trying to advocate schools, cities, farmers, and residents to plant patches for the pollinators' use all year round, because a lot of people don't understand that the pollinators need to be able to eat all year round. And when you're yanking out your crops or yanking out your flowers, then there's less for them to eat, which causes a stress on them. So would it be all right if I connect with you later on so I can promote what we're doing at our school and see if you have any advice for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I think that's kind of like the green top or the garden roofs in New York City and things like that. I think those are great ideas of implementing those things, especially as the more urban as we get as a society. I think that's a very good thing to start. And I think schools are great because you're implementing the education aspect of it, and kids can understand where or how the environment works and all the eco and all the biodiversity and everything with those. And it's like for us, it's with our hedgerows that we planted, it's really interesting because some of them aren't so pretty. Like we thought, oh, we're going to do this because we're pretty. And then you look at them and you're like, my gosh, there's about 50,000, like 50 bees on this one flower. And it's kind of eye-opening of how what's the term? How you don't see that. So it's like people can walk by something all the time and not notice it. But when you actually look towards it, you go, my gosh, that's true. You were absolutely right that they need to eat just like us all year long. And there's no difference. So I think that's wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to talk with you. I don't know how much I could help with that, but I would love to help promote that idea.
Cool. So I'm going to ask one question I got via email real quick. How many bushels of wheat per acre is he able to produce, and what is the net price per average bushel of all that is grown? And I'll put that in the chat too, just in case.
How many bushels of wheat per acre? We don't go by bushels. That's what they go by in, I think in the marketing aspect of it. It's kind of like I work in, or we grow corn and they go by hundredweight. And it's very confusing for me. I'm not a great mathematician, but how many bushels of wheat per acre? We go by tons. So like when we harvest our wheat, we go by tons per acre. So we go by tons per acre. So this year we ended up, we did a Patron variety, which is a beardless variety, which means that the wheat doesn't have all those stems off of each seed, which on the head of a wheat is all the seeds of the plant is what you eat for the wheat berries. You can buy wheat berries and cook with wheat berries, and that's what's ground into flour and things like that. But we did a Patron variety and we planted it, and we ended up getting close to 4 ton per acre, if I remember correctly right now, which is, we were very surprised, and it was a very good crop for what we planted. And average, I don't know average now across the board. I know averages are going really high up with all the tech within seed and seed manufacturing and things like of that nature for drought tolerance and things like that. And net price for average bushel of all that is grown, I have no idea. I don't know that answer at all.
I got another question too from someone that registered. What advantages do you feel small farms have over larger ones?
What advantages?
Yes.
A main advantage that I could think of right now that small farms have over large farm is that you're actually doing the work. You're actually involved and you're seeing what's going in day to day. I joke, but also am kind of serious that farming's changed to a fact that there's many people that say, well, I'm a farmer, and I would disagree that they're more of a manager. It's kind of like talking these, well, I have a coffee shop and I work at Starbucks. Well, no, you run a business called Starbucks. You're not a coffee shop owner. You're not in those day to day. You're more business, more investor. So farming's turned into more of an investing opportunity rather than an actual farmer operation. So I think an advantage of being a small farmer is that you are involved to those day-to-day businesses. You have to be well-rounded and know all of that, and be super involved. And one minor mistake can hurt you very drastically, whereas in a large farmer, a minor mistake is nothing. It's kind of like a drop in the bucket of water. But I look at that as an advantage because you get more of a reward through that. And granted, it is tough. It is very hard, and it is getting harder and harder today being a small farmer. And there's a lot of questions of whether it's worth it or not, but I enjoy my job. I enjoy what I do. And I think we're trying to hang in there just like a lot of these other farmers. But I truly believe that all these big farmers should actually split up. I don't think there should be these huge conglomerates. I'd rather have 10 farmers with 500 acres than one with 10,000. I don't think that's a good business practice or good model in my head. And I think it would create more jobs that way too. If you really want to break it down, is kind of share the wealth in a way to go across. So I think that's the advantage of being a small farmer, is that you do have the opportunities to do more and understand more and learn more, because I look at everything in more of an educational way of what can I do better and how can I do it better next year.
Thank you. Okay, let's ask some similar questions. What would you say are the advantages of going plant-based in your opinion?
The advantage of going plant-based to me is there's several things. And I listen to podcasts, and I read and listen to audiobooks, and as well as cook. And the advantage of going plant-based, I think, are health wise. So that's one thing that I've found directly to me was health was a huge thing. So my cholesterol was not high, but it was a little higher than normal, and it dropped, it plummeted, I should say. I lost a lot of weight, and I'm actually I weigh less than I was in high school at 16 years old. And I feel better. I still ache because I'm getting older. I'm not old by any means, but I feel aches and pains, especially getting off and on tractors and the trauma that comes with physical labor. But huge advantages feel. And I felt that when I first started, because I changed in 2019. I went plant-based. And I wouldn't say I'm 100% because I got tired of reading labels. I still try to do the best I can, but I'd probably say I'm more like 95, 90%. But at home, it's 100% unless something's brought in and I have a weak spot and I break. But that's rare. But I remember going back to what I was saying is I remember my sister challenging me, going, "You should try this, you should try it." I went, "Okay, fine, I'll try it. I'll do it. I'll be support for you." And I tried it, and I eat beans for lunch rather than a sandwich or something like that with ham and turkey. And I remember feeling afterwards, I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel sluggish. I actually got through the day, and granted, I was tired at the end of the day, but that's all the physical labor. But I think that was a huge advantage I felt so much better during the day, especially a hot day. And I've actually challenged some people, and they've never taken me up on it, I don't think. But I tell them, if you want to change something, quit eating meat at lunch, quit eating dairy at lunch, and tell me how you feel during the day. I guarantee you don't feel like you need to take a nap at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't think you're going to be tired by 6 o'clock. I think you're going to have more energy, and you're going to be feeling better about yourself because you're not so sluggish. And I remember when I played football at Merced College, I used to hate it at that point because I was a big meat eater and I ate everything. We just ate normally, if you will, quote unquote, normally. And I remember on game days, we couldn't eat any meat because all the blood rushes to your stomach to break down that meat. So they wouldn't do it because they said you cramped more. Well, I hated it then. Now it kind of makes sense to me now, is that if you're eating meat during lunch, you're eating a rack of ribs or eating chicken or whatever, well, all that blood goes to your stomach. So you're going to feel tired. It's taking energy away from the rest of your body to help break down that food. And I don't know what the science is on that, but what I've heard is it's similar to that. I don't know specifically, but I think that's a huge advantage of feel. So another advantage is right now there's a huge conversation about climate and whether you believe it or not. I'm starting to believe that things are rapidly changing because of humans. And granted, it could be cyclical, it could be nature. It always goes through cycles, but I think it's definitely been ramped up, and plant-based or being not plant-based goes to that, because you hear about, and I know this is just like tooting the horn of the media, but all the trees getting cut down because they don't have enough room to graze cattle and things of that nature, or grow wheat for cattle, not for humans. Because what kind of kills me in a way, or doesn't kill me, but it kind of bothers me, is that you hear about all this food insecurities and things of that nature. And it's really interesting to me that people are so food insecure and live in food deserts, yet all the food that's grown is for animals and not for humans. And why isn't that food that can cover so many more acres to feed so many more people not going to people, but going to animals, because people think they need meat, need animal protein, because they don't give two things about anything besides protein when it comes to animal food. They don't care about anything else except for, oh, you need your protein. Well, that animal got protein from the plants that it ate. It didn't create that protein. It got the protein from the plants it ate. And if you eat the plants, you cut the middleman out. It's kind of like cutting out that broker, and you broker your own crops. If you can do it, cut that middleman out and you make some more money. Same thing with eating food. You cut out that middleman of that cow digesting all that grass and hay and wheat and corn, and you just eat the corn, wheat, and not hay. You can eat alfalfa, I guess, but it wouldn't taste very good. But you can eat the corn, you can eat the wheat, you can eat everything else that animal eats, and you could get everything that animal gets as well. including the protein. So I think those are two major advantages of being plant-based, and I think it's becoming more and more a conversation, and I'm a believer. So
Would you say there's any disadvantages?
yes, I would say the biggest disadvantages of being plant-based is the derogatory remarks and or feelings of your friends and neighbors that go towards you. It definitely alienates you. And I think that's a crutch to a lot of people. And I think that actually holds people from becoming or trying to be plant-based, is because they can't go to that barbecue with their friends and watch the Raiders play. They can't go hang out. I actually just guessed on the Raiders. I didn't even see your tie. But yeah, so they think they're going to miss out on all those things. It's kind of like I listened to a podcast by a man named Rich Roll, and he talks about, because he was an addict, because he was an alcoholic. Well, I can't go to a bar if I'm an alcoholic. Well, depends. I think it depends on not everybody can. That's actually true, but I think it also depends on your willpower, if you will. If you really want to go hang out with your friends and not eat meat, you can. It depends on you. It's you make the decisions for you, not your friends. And I still hang out with people, and I still eat, and I feel ridiculous sometimes that I have to be that picky person to order that food or that. And sitting on boards, nobody that I know on any of the boards I do, they're not plant-based. So I have to sit through it, and I have to order differently, or I eat beforehand, or I bring my own food. So I think a big disadvantage of being plant-based to most people is feeling that alienation from neighbors and friends.
I agree. I think one disadvantage, at least out here in Merced, is the lack of options in terms of like vegan restaurants. I don't really eat out a lot, but if I did, like, there's just not a lot out here. Whereas I feel like if I went to the Bay Area or Berkeley or even like Sacramento, there'd be way more options for me.
I will agree and disagree, because yes, Merced doesn't have a lot of options, but there are options. So my wife and I, we go to New Thai all the time because they definitely have options. Now it's heavy oil and things like of that nature that aren't obviously super great to eat a ton of either, but definitely a great restaurant for options. Mexican restaurants, I would say that is one of the best foods to go after that are vegan, but the fact that most of the places, I will agree with you, in Merced are not vegan friendly because they put lard in their beans and their rice, and they use chicken broth in their rice and things like that. And I remember, because I cook a lot, and I like to cook, and I like to change things into, or try to adapt them from quote unquote normal eating versus plant-based eating, and they taste just as good if you take the chicken broth out. They taste just as good if you take the lard out. You don't need those extra things that you need to put in there. And there are other options. Like I was telling you, Aaron, instead of using eggs, you can use applesauce. You can use applesauce instead of oil. You can use, there's lots of options to that. As far as other things in Merced, Indian food is really good. But yes, Merced does need a lot more options. It definitely does. And there are more options in the Bay Area, but they're not as many as you think. And they're really spread out. So I know my doctors are up in Stanford, so we go to Stanford quite a bit. I think there's 2 places that I know of that are actually plant-based restaurants or vegan restaurants. One's in Morgan Hill and one's in San Jose, near San Jose. And there's also a vegan donut shop in San Jose, but donuts, whether vegan or not, are still not great for you. That's more of a guilty pleasure, but the options up there are still minimal as well. But I think they need more options, but I think it needs to be more promoted and educated. Because I think I know my sister and I, when we've gone to places in Merced or even not in Merced, and you go to some place and go, well, I'm vegan, if you will, and they'll be like, oh, what's that? Or here's some eggs and cheese. Well, no, I can't eat that either. And we went to a restaurant in Madera that we've been eating plant-based forever. And we just went there recently, and they just spilled on us finally that their noodles all have egg in it. Well, they've been telling us that's been vegan this whole time, yet it hasn't been. So I think education versus variety is more important, I think, to just people understanding, which that's happening now. There's a lot of the conversation is happening all across the world about being plant-based and the scientific aspects of how much healthier it is for you. And I think that's going to help with those options being available in small rural towns or small food deserts or anything to that nature of, you don't need this certain things. And I'll take you one further, is even the options in process. Granted, processed is probably one of the best things that you can take out of your diet. I still struggle with this today, but if you read the ingredients on chip bags, on just potato chips that you would think would be naturally vegan because it's just potatoes cooked and fried in oil, they put whey in almost every bag of chips. And whey is a garbage product. That I was reading a book the other day that whey only was incorporated because it was a throwaway product from dairies.
Correct.
So what they do, let's throw it in some chips. Let's throw it into this, and let's throw it into that for no reason. It doesn't make the flavor any better.
Right. I think they tend to do that because, Americans are like fascinated with like, oh, more protein, because whey has a bit of protein, right? That's why there's like whey protein isolate and stuff like that for muscle builders and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a discard, and it's in everything, and it's so frustrating. Like I found it in bread before. It's like,
yeah.
What? Why? And then of course they advertise it as like high protein bread.
Keto friendly. That's the new one.
Yeah, that's
keto friendly. But yeah, I'll take that too. See, I accumulate whey to circling back to farming with fertilizer. So we're trying to look into using more compost, more things of that nature. And I brought up the because there's dairies around, as much as I'm not a big fan of dairies, especially the huge ones that farm thousands or milk thousands of cows. But I equate that to the fertilizer. So I was talking about, because they take the manure from the cow and they separate it. They goes through a separator where they take the liquid and they put it into a pond, and then they take the solids and they put them separated. I equate whey as that liquid. There's not much in it. All it is water. It's not needed. It doesn't fertilize or much. And you see that stuff put on through their wells everywhere, which is another whole long conversation. But I think whey is the same way. It's not needed. It doesn't need anything. You can throw it away.
a lot of food puns in there.
What's that?
There's a lot of food puns in there. I mean, whey, which way are you talking about?
Yeah, that's funny, Jeff. No way for the whey. That's true. Should be a slogan.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, what I more so meant like in Merced is that there's no strictly vegan restaurant or like vegan grocery store. But like, I think J&R Tacos has like a vegan option and stuff like that. A local restaurant, I was speaking with their executive chef, and I asked if in the future they were hoping to incorporate more plant-based items. And he's like, no, the market's not there. People aren't ordering it. And it was a bummer, but that's just not what our community wants, I guess.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have that. And I would love to, because I love cooking, as I talked about. I'd love to open a fully vegan restaurant. My wife and I, we were in Fresno yesterday, went to a vegan truck called Planet Vegan. We had a cheat day, if you will, and had burgers and fries. And it's just, I was thinking this would be such a great thing to have in Merced. Just to have that option. Granted, it's not healthy vegan food or healthy plant-based food, but it's having that option for people. And as much as people hate fast food, and I don't like fast food, but that's the option you get in Merced is you get Burger King with the Impossible Burger, or you get Carl's Jr. with the Beyond Burger. But even then, I was thinking this yesterday is I went to a place in Morgan Hill. So there's a vegan restaurant in Morgan Hill. And I was extremely disappointed because all they did was take a Beyond Burger. They did nothing to it and just put it on a roll and said, here's your burger. So there's no real effort in vegan food right now. And that's why I say, like in Merced, I'd rather go to New Thai or Indian, where New Thai has tofu and things like that. And they actually try to cook you good food that are vegan. They don't just, here's an alternative, let me slap it on a grill with salt and here you go, just take it. So I would one up you, Aaron, on the option in Merced need to have a little more, because not just open up just a vegan place, because that's simple, right? You can just offer whatever vegan options you can, but actually make it good food and have some love and some thought behind that food.
Yeah, good point. So I wanted to open up again in case anyone has any questions.
Jeff, yeah, so Burger King's offers plant-based burgers cooked on the same grill as meat. Yes, that is true, but there are some people that eat plant-based that don't mind that crossover. I know that is true. So they are vegan, if you will, but they are cooked on the same thing. It's kind of like KFC right now. So KFC is coming out with a huge new, and a lot of places like Beyond Chicken, but they're going to fry it in the same oil as all the other chickens. So you're going to get that fat and all that stuff from that animal product. So, and I know some people that I've heard, they don't mind that. That's where I say that's where my not 100% comes from. So like I'll eat that, and granted, yes, I'm not getting 100% because it's cooked on the same grill. And I used to think that was funny because when I was in Los Angeles, because we had caterers on every show, so you'd see them. Somebody would go, "Oh, I want a veggie burger." What they do? They put it right next to the beef burgers, and they cook it, and it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. So you're basically getting part of that beef burger on your veggie burger. So that's, and then here in Chowchilla, we go to Farnesi's, and Farnesi's has a vegan or a veggie burger, but the veggie burger has cheese in it. So if you have a lactose intolerance, how can you have that veggie burger? But they don't care. They didn't change it. So I think that all comes into it is, I think those are more options for people to start going that way and not go 100%. So more of the options that we have are for people to start slowing down and not change completely, which I think is an important step. I think that's a good thing, because it's hard for everybody to go cold turkey and just stop. So I think having that burger, that Impossible Burger on the same grill, I think is a step forward. I think it is. Now to change, I think it should, but then does that depends on sales for that restaurant, I would think, because then you'd have to designate a whole separate place than the others. Because we went one day, we were late and needed to eat something, and so some of my daughters, we went to the Burger King in Mendota, because my in-laws live in Mendota, and we asked for an Impossible Burger, and they're like, "Oh, that's like a 20-minute wait because it's still frozen, because nobody buys them." I went, "Oh, great, so I'm not buying here then. See you later." So yeah, that needs to change. But it's going in the right direction, I think.
And I just think it's important that we give meat eaters these options. And maybe they don't even know what Impossible Burger is. So hopefully we're just sneaking in plant-based options into these people's diets. Because there's that perception that vegan food is bad, yet, by the way, like most produce is vegan, and people eat bananas all the time, you know? So if we can cook it well, right, which is one of the parts of it, but cook it well and then kind of decrease some of the, I don't know if you want to call it stigma around it, I think that would help.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting, is that it's all preparation, right? So I don't know many people that just take ground beef from the store and just put it on a grill and eat that. I don't know many people that don't use spices to make it different. My mom always added onion and salt and pepper and anything else to change that flavor to make it tastier. So why not do that for vegan food? And I know that a lot of these restaurants, and that's the place in Morgan Hills, all they did was just take it, like there's nothing added to it whatsoever. And I think that, because I call BS on some of these people that say that, oh, well, I had a Beyond Burger and didn't tell that the difference between a real burger. No, I can tell the difference. So if you eat both, you can tell the difference. I don't know who's saying that, but you can mimic it better from that alternative and make it taste better. I did that for my daughter's birthday. I did like an In-N-Out burger with Impossible Meat, but you have to alter that alternative to make it taste closer to the real thing. And I was thinking about that this morning too, is that's another reason why I'm not 100%, is because I still want to taste certain things. Not saying that if it goes away, I'm not going to be sad, but I still taste things because I want to know what that tastes like so I can make something that tastes like it that's not that, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting to me because, at least personally, I get very kind of grossed out just by being around it, by smelling it, by seeing it. But everyone's different.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm different that way. Like I can still eat it. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it as much. I prefer tofu, I think, almost anything else now. Like I love tofu. And it's like I've talked to my sisters about this. It's like fried chicken was one of my favorite things in the world. But if you take that same batter and you put it on tofu or you put it on seitan, you're still going to get that deep fried outer layer and you'll still get the taste. Like you won't miss the chicken. Chicken by itself is not very good, I think.
I think a lot has to do with your community respecting. It's like you can go to New York or Florida and the Jewish community, because of kosher, those restaurants will make sure that they cook it the way it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Where in the Central Valley, there's not that respect for where people are at. So you won't get the people who are wanting won't get the respect. And sorry for extending this, but that's one thing that I'm teaching the students here in my class is that I'm hoping that they do a March 4th on March 4th, and that they need to start marching forth because they can't vote. And right now, to be honest with you, our children don't want anything to do with our political system because it's a Animal House food fight. So I tell them, you guys do vote every single day when you go and purchase things. So if you go to Burger King and buy that Impossible Burger, that the economics of it will cause the restaurant to pay more attention to you. So even though our children can't vote and most of them don't want to vote, if they took a month like March 4th and on the date March 4th, went out to Starbucks or Save Marts or Burger King or McDonald's and asked them, what are you doing for these green issues? And then collectively come back and get an answer and have some type of like a Facebook or somewhere where people could say, hey, McDonald's isn't doing this, Burger King's not doing that. That will pound these people into start being responsible producers. So the consumer has the choice to make the producers do what they want them to do.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And that kind of goes in with the alienation is that you don't want to feel left out. So if you get enough people to go towards that, you're absolutely correct. Like you choose by your choices what that person does. And that's kind of, I've had that conversation or thoughts within ag is that goes with anything, is that you're now working for the person that provides the service, not the other way around, which I think is wrong. So everybody bows down to these corporations and can't wait, but they still buy. Well, if you stop buying, they'll get the message, but you need to convince enough people to do that. And that's hard to do. But that's it. You're 100%. It's all through consumer base. It's like I heard the other day with Amazon, which I buy from Amazon all the time. But how are they helping the climate crisis with these millions of trucks on the road driving everywhere, delivering every day? It's not helping much, but it's hard to break that cycle. But you just have to be more cognizant of it. I think that's a good thing that you can educate your kids is be appreciative of what you have. And don't abuse those situations with I remember that was one of the big things about me going plant-based, is that I wasn't a big cheese eater. I wasn't a big dairy person, but with meat, I ate a lot. But it got to the point where I remember hearing stories about my grandfathers that they had to raise their own animal to produce their own food because they appreciated where that sacrifice that animal had. And I don't think people appreciate that anymore, eating whatever they can at the drop of a hat. And they more appreciate meat rather than, what about all the vegetables out there that don't get appreciated? And what about all these other things that people don't care about? I think there's less appreciation with the food that they have on that plate, and they don't realize, because you can get whatever you want today. And within now, when you live in the city, you can get Amazon deliveries within the same day. So how are you appreciating what you're buying? And I think that's a big deal with that, along with what you're saying, Jeff, with the consumer base, is appreciate what you have and don't be a glutton. There's a reason why that's one of the 7 deadly sins is glutton is you don't want to do that. You should appreciate what you have, and that's how you should, I think you should go forward in your life, is appreciate what you have and not just overindulge.
I love that answer. And I kind of want to end it at that, just on gratitude. But I have a quick question that I would be remiss if I didn't ask. My intern asked it over the registration process. And she was wondering, what was the hardest part about going plant-based? Was it just like the friends thing, or was there something else? Was it like trying to give up cheese?
The hardest part for me going plant-based was probably losing, or feel like you're losing your culture. So we're Basque, or I'm Basque, which that is from the northern area of Spain and southern area of France, excuse me, in the Pyrenees Mountains. And they're all about food and drinking. So my mom and grandmother adapted their recipes, and we had a lot of different recipes. My mom was a really good cook, and so was my grandmother. And I think that was the hardest part, because I wanted to keep eating that same way. But along with that being the hardest part of losing that culture, because I love to cook, it challenged me to want to try to make what they did to keep that culture alive, but to change it just slightly and make it vegan. I was listening to Rich Roll today, and he has a lady on today called the Korean Vegan, and she was talking along the same lines of being Korean and cooking Korean American, and how people are saying, well, you're butchering your food and you're not giving it service. Well, that's not true. You can take that certain things out and alter it. And I was thinking along those lines, is that's how recipes are made, is you alter it a little bit better, or you alter it a little bit this way, and you make it another way that now is the new norm. So that, I think, was the most difficult for me, is possibly losing that culture of our family and all that food. And another close second would be the availability, like you said earlier, Aaron, is going out and finding options. It's very difficult, especially, or not especially, but even when you go to the grocery store, of reading your labels, of knowing what it is and seeing what's in it that you would think would be an easy option, and it's not. And it's infuriating, like you said. But I saw the other day, there's a company, and I can't remember what company it was, and I really like this, and I wish they'd all do this, is that in their ingredients, I think it was a chocolate bar. It wasn't even vegan, but it was a chocolate bar. But they bold typed milk, any allergens in their product, they had in bold type. So as soon as you looked at it, you could see those allergens that were in there. So it said milk, said peanuts, said something else. And I went, that's a great idea. Instead of doing on the bottom where it says, oh, this product contains nuts or whatever, you bold type it and you won't miss it, because it's really hard to understand some of these scientific names that are byproducts of these animal products that people don't know what they are. Like the red dye that's made from beetles. People probably don't even know that red dye is made from beetles. And people wouldn't know that because it has some scientific name. But if you bold type that, or you make a point to show that that's an animal product, I think that would make it so much easier. And I think that's the close second of the hardest part of going plant-based.
I agree. And yeah, 'cause it's carmine, right? Like carmine's that bug.
Yeah.
Yeah. But people don't know that. So maybe just as one tip to go about that, also with including those big bold letters, there's several apps that you can use to help identify some of those vegan products, if anyone was wondering, and I can try and find some and include that in my email after this. But also, like if you just Google the product, there's a lot of websites like PETA and some other ones. Just ask like, is Cliff Bar vegan? And it'll go through and tell you like which flavors may or may not be vegan. Though of course it kind of depends on your level of vegan or plant-based, however you want to phrase it, because some plant-based folks eat honey, others don't, and that's a whole other debate, which we could save for another time. But yeah, it depends on kind of your level of plant-based and so on.
Yeah, and that brings up what with ethics too. If you're an ethical vegan, it's really hard to buy from a product that has vegan products but also carries non-vegan vegan products. So what are you actually doing? You're eating better, but you're supporting a company that still produces something that's not vegan. So
Totally.
it's even harder to be an ethical vegan today.
Yeah.
And that lady, the Korean vegan, talked about that too. It's like you can't win today because everything's so common and so dependent upon animal agriculture that you can't. It's very hard to be, because some companies, they have to use this, or the what do you call it? The domino effect is very strong, and it's very hard to live your life that way.
Yeah. What was it? Sweet Earth? They either did like vegan or vegetarian, definitely plant-based options, and then they were bought out by someone, like some huge corporation, which does not have a lot of other vegan options or anything. So it's not like, okay, can't even eat that because then I'm perpetuating this cycle of abuse and so on.
Well, it's kind of like in farming too. I think it's funny. It's because there's a big fight against glyphosate, right? So, big fight against glyphosate and Monsanto and everything. Well, who bought Monsanto? Bayer. Who makes the aspirin you eat? Bayer. It's too hard because, like you said, it's this big company buys this big company, and the domino is it's very long, that tree, if you will. All those branches reach out, and it's hard to find where that trunk and all those roots are touching.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Nestle. Nestle bought.
Oh yeah.
Which makes sense. But
Yeah, and Nestle, if you watch that show Rotten on Netflix, they have issues with water, and there's talk about water in California and the issues with water, and yet all these bottled water that you see that's everywhere, and nobody has a problem with that.
yeah, that's a good point. Huh. Well, we should have a whole other separate thing on plant-based because I could
I
talk.
know, I think I lost a lot of people. Everybody got off once I started really talking about that, so I apologize.
Well, to be fair, it did say in your bio plant-based.
No, I put everything in there to people to ask me questions. So
Yeah, it's all fair game, I think.
I hope it was interesting. I don't know how interesting this was, but I love having conversations. So I thank you for inviting me for this, and thank you, Jeff, for asking so many questions. You shouldn't feel bad because you're in an important aspect and an important job that I would never do, and that's teaching kids. So where are you a teacher, if you don't mind me asking?
Yosemite High School on G Street.
Oh, okay.
So
All right. How many students do you have there with you?
we have 2 students in here. I had a few of them had to leave because the bus is about to take off. So that's why I was just about to tell you, I appreciate everything. We wanted to show our gratitude to you. So thank you for talking with us, and we have to head out right now so we don't miss the bus.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for your students for listening. So if you have any other questions, reach out. I'll be happy to talk to you further.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron, for the invite.
You're welcome. Have a great day, Jeff.